If the consequence of speaking your mind is not just disagreement, but social and economic exile, is your silence the only rational choice? Tonight we explore a dystopian world, manipulated by algorithms, corporations, and science. Here, your imagination reflects through an endless labyrinth of circuits, lurking just beneath the surface of the binary mirror.
We were promised the foundational construct of the agora, that in an open marketplace of ideas, truth would inevitably rise. The architects of the internet believed they were building its ultimate form, a democratizing force that would break the monopoly of traditional gatekeepers and give every voice equal footing. Yet this digital paradise quickly became something more akin to a battlefield, where the goal shifted from winning arguments to silencing arguers entirely. Today, we process the equivalent of 174 newspapers worth of information daily, yet paradoxically, know less about our shared reality than previous generations. The signal, that fragile pursuit of truth, essential to democracy, is not just lost in noise, but actively hunted for elimination. Consider how quickly, lab leak, theories went from conspiracy to credible hypothesis, or how Hunter Biden's laptop story was suppressed, only to be validated months later. Political polarization now registers at 4.5 out of 5 on standard measures, creating parallel information ecosystems where January 6th is either an insurrection or a peaceful protest, where COVID's origins are either definitively known or deliberately obscured. As George Orwell warned, if liberty means anything at all, it means the right to tell people what they do not want to hear. But what happens when the very architecture of our discourse ensures that unwelcome truths are algorithmically buried before they can challenge our preferred narratives? This fracture, however, predates the digital age. Long before TikTok's algorithm or Twitter's trending topics, legacy media had already carved America into ideological territories with surgical precision. Fox News and MSNBC don't just report different stories, they inhabit entirely different realities, where the same event becomes either a constitutional crisis or a partisan witch hunt, depending on your channel of choice. CNN's breathless coverage of Trump's "very fine people" comment persisted for years, despite the fuller context being readily available. Meanwhile, conservative outlets spent months promoting election fraud claims that even their own hosts privately dismissed as nonsense, as revealed in the Dominion lawsuit depositions. This isn't bias, it's something more dangerous: the systematic construction of parallel information universes designed not to inform but to confirm. The 24-hour news cycle, driven by outrage and narrative rather than nuance, transformed journalism from a public service into what amounts to intellectual fast food, immediately satisfying, ultimately poisonous, and designed to keep you coming back for more. Two Americans watching different networks don't just disagree about policy, they disagree about basic facts, creating a society where productive debate becomes impossible because we can't even agree on what actually happened. Exhausted by this cognitive chaos across all media platforms, we made a Faustian bargain. We would trade the messy work of critical thinking for the comfort of total algorithmic curation. The platforms gleefully accepted this arrangement, perfecting what legacy media had started by personalizing echo chambers down to the individual level. With over 70% of YouTube views now driven by algorithmic recommendations, and Google removing 5.2 billion pieces of content in 2023 alone, we've outsourced our sense-making to systems whose primary goal is not truth, but engagement, the digital equivalent of addiction. Mark Zuckerberg's own internal research showed that Facebook's algorithm actively promoted divisive content because anger drives clicks, yet the platform continued optimizing for engagement over accuracy. Trust in all media has collapsed to 42% globally, yet instead of becoming more discerning, we've retreated into increasingly sophisticated filter bubbles. Instagram shows us protests that confirm our political views while hiding contradictory evidence. TikTok's For You page becomes a perfectly calibrated reality distortion field. Even Spotify's podcast recommendations subtly reinforce our existing beliefs. We've created a world where our information diet is as personalized and as divorced from nutritional value as junk food, engineered to be irresistible while slowly poisoning our capacity for independent thought. The most insidious consequences isn't what this system does to information, but what it does to the people who dare dissent from the approved narrative. Modern censorship operates not through state decree, but through the elegant machinery of social destruction, what we euphemistically call cancel culture, but which functions more like a sophisticated immune system designed to expel dangerous thoughts. The process has become ritualized. First, the target is stripped of legitimacy through character assassination and context collapse, where years-old tweets or jokes are weaponized to destroy decades of work. Then comes the digital mob, amplified by journalists hungry for clicks and platforms designed to reward outrage. Finally, the institutional capitulation. Universities revoke speaking invitations, publishers cancel book deals, employers terminate contracts. J.K. Rowling, once celebrated as a progressive icon, became a pariah for questioning trans ideology. Prominent scientists lost positions for suggesting COVID might have originated in a lab. Comedians see venues canceled for jokes deemed offensive by activists who never attended their shows. With 41% of users now admitting to self-censorship out of fear, we've created what amounts to a panopticon prison where the guards are our own internalized terror of being next. As V warned in V for Vendetta, people should not be afraid of their governments. Governments should be afraid of their people. Yet today's most effective oppression comes not from Washington but from the weaponized crowd, where speech remains technically free, but the social and economic costs of dissent can destroy lives overnight. What emerges is perhaps the most sophisticated system of thought control in human history, a world engineered to eliminate intellectual friction entirely while making its subjects believe they're thinking freely. Global internet freedom has declined for 12 consecutive years, as we construct an environment where past statements can be retroactively redacted and problematic ideas are preemptively sterilized away. The chaotic, often uncomfortable collision of ideas that drives human progress, what John Stuart Mill called the marketplace of ideas, has been replaced by what amounts to an intellectual monoculture maintained through social pressure rather than state force. We see this in universities where 66% of students support speech codes, in corporate diversity training that pathologizes dissent, in social media platforms that ban misinformation while repeatedly getting basic facts wrong themselves. The Taliban can maintain a Twitter account while a sitting US president was permanently suspended. China's propaganda outlets operate freely on platforms that silence American citizens for questioning official COVID narratives. The result is a society where Ray Bradbury's vision of book burning seems quaint. Why destroy books when you can simply ensure no one encounters ideas that challenge the prevailing orthodoxy? As President Snow observed in the Hunger Games, hope is the only thing stronger than fear. Yet, we've constructed a system where the hope for genuine dialogue, for unexpected truths, for the messy vitality of free thought, has been suffocated not by authoritarian decree, but by our own desperate craving for comfort and validation. We set out to democratize information and ended up creating the most effective system of intellectual control in human history, one we not only tolerate but actively demand. The silencing of Kimmel and Colbert is the most sophisticated state censorship in American history, a regime weaponizing corporate fear while maintaining deniability. FCC Commissioner Carr issues veiled threats about regulatory remedies, prompting Disney and CBS to preemptively capitulate. This is jawboning perfected, no direct orders needed, when comedians disappear with Soviet efficiency. Nexstar, facing a $6.02 merger requiring FCC approval, refuses to air Kimmel before ABC suspends him, revealing how thoroughly the regime has colonized NIA minds. The Washington Post abandons democracy dies in darkness, while the LA Times pulls endorsements at billionaire owners' whims. What makes this insidious is its voluntary nature, no jackbooted censors needed when companies eagerly self-police. The result, laughter becomes sedition, presidential jokes transform into career-ending sick behavior, J.D. Vance openly calls for employment blacklists. We've built a digital panopticon, staffed by corporate compliance officers enforcing orthodoxy, so complete that dissent withers before expression. The Founding Fathers feared government tyranny, but never imagined citizens demanding their own silencing, the marketplace of ideas replaced by algorithmic echo chambers. As Carr celebrated with a triumphant gif, we witnessed something more devastating than traditional censorship, a society that learned to silence itself, replacing court jesters with cease and desist notices.